Dad, you're always watching these business videos and stuff. Do you make a lot of money? How much money do you make? He's like, and my wife hates that. Like, don't get into money stuff. I just tell him, like, Joseph, you want to know how to get rich? He says, yeah. And I go, well, here's the secret. You listening? He goes, yeah. Okay. Learn how to help as many people as possible.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Welcome back to the podcast on podcasting, and I'm your host, Triple A, Adam A. Adams. I'm excited because today we're really going to show you one way, not the way, but a way that you can really grow your show. Your goal is to get more listeners, more downloads, maybe move up in the rankings. And if you don't know why that's your goal, one of the main reasons is, well, hell, you started the podcast. Why not make it famous? Why not have listeners? Most people, they start their podcast and typically they only have a couple hundred downloads per week, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 downloads per month, and which doesn't really help you move your business forward. So you only started your business for one of two reasons. You either started that podcast because you wanted to make a difference and an impact, and it wasn't selfish at all. You didn't even care about money. You just wanted to get that story out there and help people. Or you started it because you wanted to grow your business. You wanted to grow your influence. You wanted to be able to have affiliate income, maybe sponsors, monetize the show. But if you don't have listener, you're not going to be able to do either. You won't make an impact. You're not going to help anyone by putting your story out to nobody. And you're not going to be able to have affiliate commissions or monetize your show if you don't have listeners. And Ralph Cochran's on the show. I'm thrilled. I will share. We have a couple things in common, Ralph, that I love, and I just want to share it with the listener. Most of the listeners of this show, now I have another real estate show, but the listeners of this show, they don't know that I am a real estate investor. I've been real estate investing since 2005 because of my dad. And Ralph used to own $30 million mobile home parks. And although I've done a mobile home, I've never done a mobile home park. I've tried all sorts of other things. We do multifamily, single family. I've done self-storage, a mobile home. It didn't work out too well. We don't need to get out into it on this, but it's kind of fun to have somebody on the show that goes back with me. So back in the day when the crash of 2008 was happening, Ralph owned $30 million of these mobile homes, and I owned a little bit of multifamily back then in the crash. And it wasn't super pretty for either of us. I won't tell your story all the way. But for me, I actually lost my property. I lost my multifamily in 2011. Anyway, wow. Fast forward, and I'm doing a lot better in multifamily, but I also have a business around podcasting. Ralph's got a business around podcasting. But what's interesting that's going to benefit you, the listener, is that you're going to find that there is another way, a way that we don't always think of. And I personally like these books by Gino Wickman. I think it's called the VI collaboration or the VI. You'll read Gino Wickman, you'll look it up and you'll be like, that's what it is. But it's a visionary integrator. And I think that there's a lot of visionaries, Ralph, I don't know if you agree with me, a lot of visionaries that start podcasts. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you talking about Rocket Fuel? Is that
Rocket Fuel.
Yeah.
The relationship.
Yeah, that's actually the book I was going to bring up. That's one of the most pivotal books in my in the past 5 years of my business life.
So it's cool for the listeners. Ralph is a 50% owner in a show called Turley Talks. So Ralph, real quick, tell us a quick bit about what Turley Talks is and who the face of the company is.
So people might, if anyone on here is a follower, they might bump it. The gentleman's name is Dr. Steve Turley. So when you're on YouTube, that's how the channel looks. But the brand is Turley Talks. And so the focus of the channel is that what we're doing is we've built a platform in which we talk about geopolitical events through a conservative lens and more of a conservative lens that would lend itself to a nationalist populist viewpoint, which is, become pretty front and center in the past couple years. But Dr. Turley had been researching this when he got his PhD in cultural anthropology back in the 2000s, and he had seen trends overseas that he thought were going to come over to America. And so through that, that's the genesis of this. But when we actually started the podcast, he teaches at a Christian school. It's called a classical Christian school. And he was more talking about like a lot of like theological things and educational things. And it was kind of like over intellectual, kind of yawning. And I was saying like, dude, we got to find our voice. We got to find our voice. And then he came to me after we were talking and told me about some of this research he was doing. I says, that's it. That's what we need to focus on. So that's kind of, without getting into all the details, but the channel is about political. It didn't start that way though. So I think having some flexibility on finding your voice and where your place is and where you're comfortable was key. But now it's grown dramatically, and we have 760,000 followers on YouTube. And we have a lot of other channels we're on with, alt media, Rumble, BitChute, etc. And on the podcast, did you want to get into the podcast, like how that started? Because that's actually an offshoot. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I'll let you lead here.
Okay. So first off, the listener still doesn't know, or some of them probably do because the show is fairly famous, but many listeners might not be following the stats on all the podcast charts. And Turley Talks, the last I checked, was number 5 in the United States. Is that right? Number 5 of all podcasts in the USA?
Yeah, to be very specific to the podcast community, because these people can screw with the numbers and the rankings to make it look good for them. We were ranked, I actually have the chart up here on Chartable right now. Back through December, we were ranked number 5 in trending in news. So trending is a key thing. So the way they rank things different. Then there's the actual ranking that's not necessarily trending. Today, just full disclosure, where that trending line has gone down to 84, but that's since before Christmas. And the reason why is basically we didn't work as hard over Christmas, and then we focused on our families and stuff, but that should shoot back up. But we were basically in the top 20 or 30 since back in October, and got as high as the top 5 in news. And we're actually playing with some kind of creative ideas right now. I recently hired a part-time guy to do some analytics, and we're looking at maybe switching our categories up because we might be able to rank higher, which helps us persuade advertisers. We now have built out a sales team now to help sell ads onto the podcast. So, but the podcast, we actually never saw ourselves doing a podcast until the pandemic. So we had the YouTube channel. We got scared because we're doing conservative news commentary. A lot of these big tech platforms don't tend to like that too much. We're not too bombastic or crazy, but you never know. And so it's a lot of people we do know in the space were getting demonetized or even deplatformed, and we were getting freaked out. So back last February, I had this, whoa, we got to rethink this whole thing. And I started we got to have an insurance policy. So by May, we started planning to launch. Really, we had a podcast. We had SoundCloud, and we would upload regurgitated content once every couple weeks, if we even did that. So I think, So anyway, long and short, by May, we put a team together and launched the podcast at the end of June, early July, and it's taken off since. And so we're really brand new. We've only been at this 6 months.
Nice. Well, you're not new at influencing. And here's the 2 things that I think that the listener is going to get the most value out of. And I could be wrong, but I think these are the 2 things that they're going to get the most value from you, Ralph. Number 1 is the relationship, that VI triangle or the VI relationship. I'm glad you brought up Rocket Fuel. What are his other 2 books? Rocket Fuel, What the Heck is EOS, and
Traction? Is that it?
Traction. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Ralph's relationship with Steve, because you're a 50% owner in the podcast, but we don't hear your voice or see your face very often on the podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm very seldom on. Sometimes, we recently were able to get White House press passes and go to a lot of the Trump rallies and stand right next to the mainstream media and as
Cool.
us. And so because of that, I would be there with a team and I would be on a little bit there. But other than that, like I would say 98%. When people see me, they're like, who the heck's this guy? Where's Steve? We want Dr. Turley. We don't want him. So it's kind of funny, but that's all good for me. So, but yeah, I'm kind of the mastermind behind it and the orchestrator. I do all the business stuff, all the marketing. I mean, Steve has input, but we're not like Steve does the content. And we were just joking the other day because we were like, looking at our year-end numbers and just we were planning. We just did our business meeting for the 2021 plan and what we're going to be doing. And basically, for the most part, Steve doesn't ask me permission for what content he's going to put up. I don't ask him permission for what business thing we're going to do or how I'm going to build out some plan and strategy for advertising or whatever, or some funnel or some thing. So, but that's the gist of the relationship. And he's really an academic at heart, and that's his strength. He's a researcher, he's a scholar, and he kind of works in his lane. And he's pretty introverted in an ironic way. Like he loves to just be at home and research and stuff. I mean, he's very gregarious and fun loving, but he's not like, he doesn't like his energy. I'm actually the extrovert. I'm the kind of out and like be around people and stuff. But so anyway, long and short, so Steve, the way we bumped into each other is my kids attended his school and he came up to me. We were actually introduced from the development director at that school. I had cut a deal with that school to get tuition for my kids. And then I did their marketing for them. And I had just then started a marketing agency that exclusively still focuses on schools, that's right behind me, Scola right there. That's my other business. So, and then Turley Talks over the years became a client of Scola's. But when Steve first came to me through that introduction, he's like, listen, I'm a teacher. He's a pretty popular teacher. Like at the major national events, he gets asked to speak on classical education, and he has a degree in rhetoric and aesthetics, which is like, I didn't even know there were degrees in that stuff. And so long and short, he said, Ralph, I want to know how to not just teach high school kids, but teach tens and thousands. And I get people that come to me all the time. I'm kind of I have a lot of church pastors that I'm plugged in with, and they want to grow and do their thing and, be popular and all this stuff. And they go, hey, Ralph, can you help me with my marketing? And I tell them a couple things to do. And if you guys are like me, like you'll probably get this too, like they don't listen. Like they are not really serious. They don't want to put in the work. They want to say, what's the trick? What's the secret, sauce kind of thing. And I told my wife, I got another one. So I just gave him, hey, go start a Twitter account and start post on there. And he did and so he came back to me like 3 months later. This is like in 2015, early. And he's like, hey, what do I do next? I go, well, what did you do? And he goes, well, I got my Twitter up to like 10,000 followers. I'm like, what? I go, how did you do that? And he told me what he did and how he's on there every day. He would post like 5-6 times. And I'm like, how do you do that with all your time? He's like, I just do this. I wake up really early in the morning and I have it all scheduled up. And he's like, he told me he was like waking up at 4 a.m. at one point to do this. And then he came back and said, well, what's next? And I was like, oh my goodness, this guy is serious. And then I said, well, what are you researching? Like, what do you love? And he goes, well, I love the Christian education stuff. I love the idea of, aesthetics and truth, goodness, beauty, like all these classical Christian kind of cool things and theology and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, well, and then we talked more about that. And then he told me, I says, well, what else? He said, well, I've been studying, he got his doctorate in England from Durham University in cultural anthropology, which is like an analytical kind of thing of culture and trends and stuff. And he had been studying some demographers and just other cultural anthropologists. And they were seeing these trends as early as like 2005, 2008 on this movement called nationalist populism over in Europe. And they saw this starting to rise. And it kind of, one of the places it was really starting to get traction is in Hungary. And so Steve studied all this stuff and he'd been watching it. He goes, yeah, I think we're going to see, and this is 2015, I think in the next election, we might see a nationalist populist president rise up, win the election and take over. I was like, what? And he was like, so you tell me all this stuff. And I go, all right, that's what you need to start focusing on, because that's going to have, a broader base and capture more people. By basically in the summer of 2016, late summer, I had just been thinking more about what he's doing. And by the way, we're not business partners at this point at all. It's just like me just helping a friend kind of thing on the side. And I was really just kind of like, is this guy actually going to like listen to me? Because I had been through some bad business partner relationships from my real estate, which is, we're not going to get into that here, but we can. I'm okay to talk about it. But the point here is to focus on this. But my real estate, I had some, kind of jaded edges, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna there's no way I'm going back into business with someone else again because I got so screwed over last time. So anyway, but he was and every step of the way, he's way smarter than me in his area, and I'm smart too. But he was, and I was like, can we work together and stuff? So literally, we didn't really form our partnership till 2 years later. So like a legal setup. And what I did is I was just giving him advice. And so I told him, listen, you need to start a YouTube channel and talk about, because of his research, nationalist populist research, he had this idea that there's going to be a president that's going to come. And when Trump announced his election that summer, he said, Ralph, he's going to win. He's down in polls. That's impossible. And he goes, no, he's going to win. Long and short is November 1st, 2016, Steve started the YouTube channel and made the case over 6-7 videos why Trump would win, and he did. And then from there, he just kept doing it. And he, to this day, he publishes 2 videos a day about political events. And we take those videos and convert them into podcast audio. That's where the podcast comes from. And so that's actually up until now. We're going to actually maybe start doing an exclusive podcast. Might need to get some of your advice on that, because we actually, as ironic as it might sound, is like, oh, this is amazing. I think ignorance is bliss. Like this time last year, if you would have asked me how to measure success on a podcast, I didn't know it was measured by downloads. I wouldn't have even been able to answer that question. I didn't know anything about podcasting.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn, and I got in some Facebook groups, communities like yours, and just began to absorb and ask questions, learn. And and that's the thing. Like, it's like, if one of the things I noticed, and I see this, I also have owned an Amazon business too. It's like everyone wants to become the master, the technician. And they think oh, I need to, what equipment do I need? Or how do I do all this stuff? Do I have what color padding do I need on my soundproof thing? And it's just, Adam has blue. Is that better? That's it just gets silly, right? So
it's my mood. It puts you in a good mood. Hey, let me pull this into a funnel to kind of make sure that our listeners getting value from the story that you mentioned. So you're talking about the relationship that you and Steve have. You're talking about how you met him and how he ended up taking action and doing the Twitter and getting 10,000 followers. You talked about how you saw that he had message. He had a message. In fact, you saw that he had many different messages and that he was passionate about all of them. And one of the genius things that you did was you honed that message in. You focused it. You honed his message. You're like, okay, this is the thing that we need to put out. Oh, and then you were being a visionary. Hey, this is, we need to have a YouTube channel. We need to start a YouTube and we need to put this out in front of people. And this is how we're going to do it. And this is what you're going to do. And the other lessons that I'm getting, because I think the listener needs to focus their messaging as well. I think that the listener, I have many clients. So we help podcasters, and and I listen to so far, eventually, because right now I have 163 podcast episodes that I need to listen to because I've been listening to every episode from every client we have. And when I pull on a new client, I have to go and listen to the episodes that get downloaded. So here I am sitting there and listening to all these episodes. And one of my clients is not doing what you're doing, focusing the message. And so he has some messages where he's talking about some hocus pocus fluffy thing. And he has some messages where he's talking about maybe entrepreneurship, some where he's talking about health, some where he might be talking about modeling, and not all of these things serve the audience of the person who kind of sees it and wants to be following it. And that seems to hurt the podcast for him because his listeners can't come and understand what kind of value they're going to get. They might be talking about theology one day. They might be talking about another thing one day, but the title of the podcast doesn't talk about it. It's talking about modeling or God or recycling or composting or whatever. It talks about entrepreneurship. That's the title of the whole podcast.
Right.
And it's not being served. So it's confusing a lot of people. Now, sometimes we can make a show called Ralph Cochran Show or the Adam Adams Show or the Steve Turley Show or whatever it might be called. And then we can talk about anything that we want. But when we have a title like entrepreneurship or the podcast on podcasting, I have to serve a podcaster. Right. It doesn't benefit the podcaster today who's listening if I teach them, because Ralph, you and I are both doing OMAD, the OMAD diet. Some people don't know what that is. 1 meal a day. I personally only eat dinner. I wait until 6-ish, 7 or 8 in the evening, and I basically only eat meat. But I'm not going to teach the listener how to do this, even though I'm excited and passionate about it. I also am partnered in $100 million of real estate right now. But on this show, I'm not going to teach you how to go and find your first real estate deal because that doesn't serve you. I'm passionate about it, but I'm not getting crazy. I'm focusing my message on this show. Yep. So it's all about podcasting. And that's what you did. And you did it to another level where you're like, Steve, you're passionate about all of these things, teaching students, teaching 10,000 people at a time. You got this degree, 2 degrees that nobody ever knew or even existed. And then he went to England and got that other degree at that fancy school, the doctorate degree. And you look at all of the possibilities and you say, Steve, focus on this. Now, Ralph, if you went to my other client who's all over the place on a podcast that's supposed to only serve entrepreneurship, you would have already solved his problem. So what's great is I know that the listener, most people listening, actually will make that mistake that my client made, and they won't be doing what you're saying. So this is an impactful podcast episode.
Yeah.
Just talking about that. Okay, so focus message.
One quick thought on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not to sound over the top bombastic here, but like, I think that's an ego problem. Like I think that's what that's about. Like, do you really care about your audience or do you want to just have people hear you talk? Like, how do you actually love your audience? How do you do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Like, do you go to the cocktail party and like listen to that person, that guy tell you, or that woman tell you all the different things they did this past year? Or do you like someone that's asking you questions or helping you with where you like, to me, that's what the core of it is. And so if you don't know, you have to see yourself as serving your audience. Otherwise, I mean, you're not going to have an audience, first of all, because people don't want to listen to that guy at the cocktail party, right? So, and that's why he's by himself in the corner. And so they all know, don't go over there. You'll get in a conversation about everything he's done. So I think that's a key thing that people have to do is get rid of your ego and think about how do you serve people. I had 6 kids. My youngest is 8 yesterday, and he jumps on my bed and I was watching TV and he's like, Dad, you're always watching these business videos and stuff. Do you make a lot of money? How much money do you make? He's like, and my wife hates that. Like, don't get into money stuff. I just tell him, like, Joseph, you want to know how to get rich? He says, yeah. And I go, well, here's the secret. You listening? He goes, yeah. Okay. Learn how to help as many people as possible. He's like, what? Mm-hmm. I go, yeah. If you learn how to help people, they'll give you their money for that. But you have to help them. So, and care for them.
Love that.
So
genius. Okay. All right. So focusing on the messaging, I also just want to dissect this relationship. I think it's interesting. You rocked my world. I was really surprised when you said you're the extroverted type personality and Steve's the introverted type personality, because most people who seek out influence, seek out to be an influencer, are extroverted people. Obviously, from what I'm understanding is he wasn't trying to have a YouTube. He wanted the result, and you saw what he needed to do to get the result. And I think that's really interesting. And I think a lot of the listeners can really relate to his type of story because there's so many podcasters or YouTube channels out there where they have people that are very extroverted and excitable and maybe not focused, to be honest, maybe not able to focus. And what is interesting is with your relationship with Steve is Steve gets to do what he absolutely is passionate about, which is 2 things in my mind, what I've heard you say. Researching, because he's a scholar. He just wants to pull all this information. And then once he has it, now he can put it into a package that's good for other people. So he can spend all day, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, and he can put out 2, maybe 3 videos of all of this stuff that he had. And your big job is, all right, how are we going to get this in front of people? How are we going to monetize this? How are we going to get sponsors, good sponsors, paying sponsors? And other people, they try to do all of this alone, Ralph. They like, I'm the podcaster, I'm the marketer, I'm the salesperson, I'm the one who's going to call and try to get sponsorship. I'm the one who's going to edit my own show. I'm the one who's going to publish my own show, write my own show notes. And they're like, this is so hard. But you were able to get in your lane. Speaking of rocket fuel, Gino Wickman, you get in your lane, you market, you blow up this, and you let him do his best work, which is studying and putting out that content. I think it's powerful. Regardless of who's the visionary and who's the integrator, I think the collaboration between the two of you is what has made your podcast be able to be top 100, top 5. Okay, I have an appointment soon after our call, Ralph. And so I want to jump into monetization because you have been able to get your podcast to score, top 5. And you are able to start getting those downloads increasing. And I understand that right before you and I were talking, you crossed the 1 million download mark, I think, on your podcast, which is incredible. It's awesome, especially for a show that just started so recently. How you're focusing on monetizing that show is more of a way that bigger businesses do. And I want you to share that strategy with the listener so that they can take a few pieces of it and implement it into their show to be able to monetize.
Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show.
Yeah. So we had sponsors on our YouTube channel, and we were up to like this time last year, like we've doubled the size of that too. It's like we were like 250,000 last year, and we're at 760 now. We had an agency that reached out to us, and like they just do some ads and stuff, pulling in money from that. But that when I went to launch the podcast in June, I called him and said, "Hey, listen, can you guys get sponsors for our podcast?" He's like, "Well, how many downloads do you have?" And I go, "None. We haven't started." And he goes, "Well, you have to have at least 10,000 downloads an episode to be able to be even considered." And he goes, "But you can put it on our podcast platform." And I was like, "Not doing that." And I go, "I'm not letting him have control of it on his podcast platform." So we're on Simplecast, and I chose Simplecast because that's all I knew at the time. I heard of some of the other ones, and we just decided to go with this one. And so anyway, long and short is what happened was I decided just like, okay, let's get creative. Even though we don't have any downloads, we can still get sponsors. And I go, we'll see where we can. I don't know where this is going to end up. At the time, I thought, man, wouldn't that be amazing if we get like 20,000 people on this in like the next, 60 days download. We hit that in like the first week once we launched. It was crazy. And what we did is we separate reach and monetization is kind of how we talk about things in our planning. Like what's our reach plan? What's our monetization plan? And they obviously, collide with each other in a good way. So when we were starting out, I'll tell you where we are right now. And I'll tell you where I'm kind of giving you back then. Right now, today, I can confidently say we're pulling in from all of our stuff over 200,000 a month. Easy. But if I subtract out the YouTube ads, the paid ads that you get from Google, we're probably closer to like 100,000-ish, maybe even slightly under that, 90,000-ish. But a year ago this time, our overall, we were pulling in like 30,000, a month, which was good, but it was like, but everything was YouTube centric. And so we wanted to create this media platform, Turley Talks, not just a YouTube channel, which is what we were known for. So in order to monetize multiple channels, I'll just kind of list them out for you. And then you can ask, maybe if you want me to get into certain ones, I can dive in because some might be more interesting than others. One of them is on the podcast. What we did, we got it launched and I said, we got to get our reach up to attract sponsors for it. So by September, we had something. What we did, we started taking and building packages. So instead, a lot of times people, when you look at like how like Ben Shapiro or any of the big names that you go out on Bongino and look at the way they run their thing. I've actually called, one of the things I did is I called the advertising agencies to act like I wanted to advertise with them. And all I wanted to see is their price list and how they structured everything. And a lot of their stuff is a la carte. So if you want to be on the 4-Hour Work Week with Tim, what's his name? You guys know what I'm talking about. And
Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss. Do you know one 30-second ad? I think it was one 60-second ad on there is $43,000.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so the place, I'm like, wait a second. So what I did is, well, let's package this and let's bring a ton of value for our new people. And it's like this, for the first 6 months, let's just give way more. And so what we did is we created a package that went beyond just the podcast. So we said, you're going to get an ad on the podcast for a month. And you're also going to get website banners. You're going to get on our email list. We also created a daily email that went out to kind of complement that. And what else did we do? There was a lot of other stuff. And so anyway, like those are some of the big ones. So that was kind of the key thing. And then we created this package and we tried to price that and sell it. And it was like a lot of value. It was more, I'm a big fan of Russell Bunson with ClickFunnels. And he talks about this idea that you have to have way more value than what the actual, if your value is so high, then people see, okay, that price is justified. So we were given like what was perceived value of like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Oh, here, you can have this for $1,500. But what I wanted to do is get a series of people that advertise with us and get success stories from them. And that would catapult us forward. And so we kind of use that to create case studies. We had people pay us to create case studies for us. Is kind of one way to do it. So the other side of it was what I also decided to do was create what I called a benefit conference. And so, virtual, we wanted to get Steve out speaking more in live events this past year. And obviously that didn't happen. And so I was like, well, let's do a virtual event. Let's try I came up like, let's try a benefit conference. Like Steve and I have some charities. We are friends with some of the directors, and I live in Lancaster. There's an Amish guy that has a food bank near here. And Ivanka Trump had visited it, he lives like a mile from my house, like 2 weeks prior in August of last year. And I reached out to him and said, hey, listen, how about, we'll come over, shoot a video, a backdrop of all you've done. And then we'll make the conference also a portion of the proceeds from the ticket sales from the conference go to that charity. So we did that. And so we sold tickets for that. And then we had a sponsorship for that. That's where I'm going with this. So we created a sponsorship package for the benefit conference. It included the podcasting. So there was more value. So I had to just how am I going to create more value to make that value so high? So we did that and we charged like $3,000-$4,000 for that, or $5,000. I forget what it was. And then that ended up, I think we got 2 sponsors for that. And that was kind of our initial wave of advertisers on our podcast. By September of just this, fall, I think for that benefit conference, we made $30,000. We had 350 people on that event. First time we ever did it. And then one of the most important things with getting advertisers is you have to have advertisers. People want to see that there's advertisers. Like they don't want to go to your podcast and not hear anyone because they want to be like, who's like me that's advertising with you? Anyway, that was kind of one of the key things. Now, I run another business, has 15 employees with the marketing agency. And then I have Turley Talks. It's become its own thing. So I also had to build a team around this. I've never to this day have ever uploaded. I don't know how to upload a podcast. If you asked me to do it right now, I couldn't do it. And you'll also, if you go on and look at Turley Talks, look at Steve Turley on YouTube, you can see his studio. We don't have the right technology. Like our microphone stinks and the lighting is like, okay. Most of you would critique it and say, this is horrible. I'm trying to get Steve to upgrade. I think he still uses his webcam and through all this stuff. And so it's not about the technology. It's about the messaging and it's about monetization. So to move forward with the other monetization things, I say that to make this point, like it's not, the technology doesn't make you money. Meaning that all the tech gadgets, that just makes you feel good. Like you're doing all the right, you're busy and you should get that eventually. So we're trying to get those upgrades now to him and kind of build that out. Another thing that we learned too, and this is like huge takeaway. We're on a YouTube, right? So people see us on YouTube, but then obviously on the podcast, they come over. But one of the things we knew, we intentionally we've had opportunities to have like a fancy studio, and maybe we don't. When you look at Steve on YouTube, it's actually him in his bedroom. His bed is next to there. He hates that.
Yeah.
But it's that crazy. Like you would think, what? And it's like, and so not that we're permanent there. What we do is we want it to make it feel homey, because our audience wants to feel authentic and transparent. They don't need the big mainstream media, setup. And we could do it. And that part of that's our persona too, because they hate the mainstream media. And so we don't want to look like them either. So when we look at some of our other podcasts, our YouTuber friend type stuff, and see what they do, they go to these big fancy studios and have all this backdrop. And like, ours is just homegrown. You feel like you're with Steve in his house, and you are. That's what's amazing. So anyway, those are the two monetization channels so the benefit conference and then the podcast packages were the kind of two things we started to monetize. And then one of the other things we started really introducing it, we had already had Teespring, but we really got serious about it. And so we started doing more with that, the swag. What else? Yeah. So I'll tell you what you want to hear what we're looking forward to do?
Yeah.
One of the things I'm looking at doing this virtual benefit conference. So we have our second one we're doing one a quarter right now. We might change it one a month. And so we have the next one this Saturday, and we have a state senator Mastriano on there from Pennsylvania, who led the Gettysburg thing and all the political stuff. And then we have this guy whose gym was shut down in New Jersey, was on Tucker Carlson. He's going to be on there. And we're already up to like 500 ticket sales for that. We should be at like 600 or 700 by Friday. We'll probably make $40,000 or $50,000. What I'm finding though, this is the problem with our current setup, is that what we struggle with is we don't have a good back end product to sell people into, like a high ticket. We call it a high ticket item that's selling for like $5,000, $10,000. Because like, who wants to pay to have Steve teach you how to think about politics? Like, that's just like not really. So the other big thing we also launched was this Insiders Club. So where Steve, we have people pay for, and I know I'm going stream of conscious here, I apologize, but the Insiders Club is another monetary channel that we started too. And so let me talk about the Insiders Club, and I'll come back to what we're doing for 2021 because they're connected. So the Insiders Club, we launched that basically last year, spring. It fell apart. It didn't work. And we only had like 80 people on it by October of this year. And I started sitting back and looking at like, we need to control our audience, because if we're on these big tech, if we get censored, how do we control? And I kind of kept coming back to the same theme of why we did the podcast. And so in October, I worked on some of the messaging. I went back to some of the sales psychology too, like with creating FOMO. You know what FOMO is? Fear of missing out. And then also creating scarcity in your pricing. Like, okay, this is going to end. So what we did is we had this Insiders Club, and Steve then would get on, and he wasn't doing live streams at all either. Nothing live. And then he would get on and do a live stream, and then we messaged it and say, this is going to end by this. And it sounds salesy, but the audience loves it because they follow him. Remember, they're his audience. You have to realize these people love you. They want to buy stuff from you, and we're trying to build this. So literally, since this is actually probably my biggest, like, I'm very thankful for and proud of, like, if through everything, even the podcast is great, but this is probably more exciting, is we went from, since October, we went from 80 members in our Insiders Club that pay us $19 a month to today we have nearly 3,000. And we're pulling in like 40, 50 grand a month from them. So it's just crazy. And so, but the problem with all of that, going back to 2021, like looking at 2021, is we don't have something to upgrade them into, because they don't necessarily, they have like, there's a whole structure with the Insiders Club. They have a private community, and Steve, like, I think it's Thursday, every Thursday is like a live Q&A. They get on with them, and then he tells them what videos he's going to produce for the week and asks them, what do you want me to talk about on every Sunday? And so he gets, basically, they tell him what content they want. And he does that with the Insiders Club, and they love the impact they're having. And then he takes that out to the broader audience and does the podcast and stuff.
One of the things that I got from you is that you're focusing on two things separately, the reach and the monetization. So one is the reach. How do we get in front of more people? How do we grow this? Where do we put this channels? What's our messaging? What are we going to talk about? How are we going to talk about it? How are we going to record that, etc.? And you're separately thinking about the monetization. Who are we going to have for sponsors? How are we going to make sure that they want to sponsor us? And the cool things that I learned that you did to be able to monetize better is you reached out to advertising agencies and you pretended to be looking to, sponsor something. You looked at their sponsor package. You looked to see how they were set up and what they were charging. And then you decided to add more value. The next thing that I learned from you that I thought was valuable to the listener and that we can implement for our shows is that you focused on getting those sponsors, like with Russell Brunson, $8,000, $7,000 of value for only $1,500. There was a value stacking over here, and then this is your price. And the other part of what I'm hearing that's brilliant about that is that this was the main purpose was to make sure that you started attracting the type of sponsor that you want so that the other type of sponsor that you want can listen in and say, oh, okay, other people like me are sponsoring this show. And even if they were only paying $1,500 in the beginning, now you're able to get a larger amount with the next sponsors. Another very interesting thing that I learned from you is this idea of having an event. And I love that. I like to tell my audience that there's 3 pillars of influence. Your thought leadership platform, which could be a book or a YouTube or a podcast or a blog or a Facebook community that you run. What you do on social media so that people know what you're doing and they can get connected with you and follow you there. And what you do in person. And the in-person can be a conference that you host, a meetup that you host, a storefront that you run everything through your storefront, or you're sponsoring other people's things. But you gotta have that in-person part. And you've been able to monetize that really well, selling 500, 600 tickets to events like this, even if they're virtual, doing it quarterly, considering moving that to monthly. And that you're thinking of that in 2 ways, ticket sales and sponsorship revenue. And you're able to make 30, 40, 50, 60,000 at one of these events. And the other thing that I gained from you is this idea of a high level ticket. Again, this goes back to Russell Brunson, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $40,000 packages for consulting, for marketing, for whatever it is, where you see that you went from 30, I think you said 30 people, 80 people in October paying $19 a month. Now you have 3,000 people paying $19 a month, which is somewhere around $60,000 a month in revenue. Is that accurate or am I miscalculating?
Yeah, just in the Insiders Club.
Yeah, just in the Insiders Club. And so what's interesting, now you're considering, Ralph, what's going to be our high level thing that's a few thousand or $10,000 or $20,000? What can we do? It's not because we're cruel, ruthless, bad people who want to just monetize for our gain. But the truth about it is your follower, those 3,000 people, there is a good percentage of those 3,000 people paying $19 a month that wish and hope for something more. So you're developing that package to support them, just like you told your son in the beginning of this call. You mentioned that your son I think he came up to your bed and he was like, Dad, how much money do you make? And you said, son, this is the one thing you can do is serve people. If you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get everything in life that you want.
Yep.
Son, all you got to do is serve people. And these 3,000 people are getting more value because you're value stacking your ladders. And I know that a percentage of them want to pay you or Steve $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for something. I know that they want to. You're just going to develop that product to give them that's going to give them all of that value. Is that right?
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find someone I can partner with that can bring that value. So what we found is our audience, there's a lot of people that want to no longer be tied to their jobs. They want to become entrepreneurs. And so we're looking to talk to people that can teach them, like someone like you, like someone like has a podcast, how to be a podcaster or how to buy real estate or how to do stocks. And we're actually looking at it because I don't personally, Steve and I don't want to focus on building our own little high ticket offer that we have to manage and have all this stuff. but maybe we'll do an affiliate partnership deal with someone. So
Brilliant.
right now I'm out looking for someone to partner with that. Then we can come in and say, okay, hey, we'll do an event. We'll bring 3,000 people to it, 2,000 people, and then you'll sell to it. And then we get, we'll sell on the initial front end offer and then get, scale it up and we get a cut of that. And then, so I'm not having to build on an other business. That's not really our core focus.
Yeah. That is interesting. And I've had high ticket sales on my side. Like there have been in 2019, I had several one-on-one clients. They were paying $42,000 to work with me for a year. And there's a lot of expenses and I love it. I want to support people.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to complain about anything. All I'm saying is they may have paid me $42,000 and I may have given an affiliate fee of 10 or 20% of that automatically to somebody. Maybe $8,000 that somebody makes for almost doing nothing. And then I'm doing air quotes here. I'm stuck with, the other 30-ish thousand.
Yeah.
And a whole year of support and effort and time. And it's the affiliate who made $8,000 automatically that made way more than me for their time and effort. And so I think it's really smart, Ralph, that you're considering bringing in 1 or 2 or 3 people that are either teaching stocks or real estate or something like podcasting, where they make a high ticket and you just get that quick affiliate commission to be able to grow your audience. And you don't have to build a new business around all of that. Ralph, I am so sorry, but I'm going to cut you off. I know that you
want to buy some
so much
apartments
more value.
Come on.
Let's do it. Let's buy some apartments. Let's have our 1 meal a day together every day. So here, let's do this. The listener might want to find you, get a hold of you, or just check out the show that you mentioned, Turley Talks, for Steve Turley, that you're 50% owner. How does the listener reach out?
Yeah, I think the best way, go to the website, turleytalks.com. And then on there, you can see the podcast link and it has all the different podcast channels we're on. And then also, you can also find us obviously on YouTube under Steve Turley. If you want to reach me, my email is ralph@turleytalks.com. My assistant, vets all my emails. So make sure you'd say you heard me on this podcast because I don't have time to read all my emails. So, but anyway, long and short, that's the best way to get in contact with me.
To the listener, the email address, ralph@turleytalks, that's already in the show notes. And also the turleytalks.com is already in the show notes. So you just go down, grab that link, and then you'll be able to see all the channels. You'll be able to reach out to Ralph. All of that information is in the show notes for you. Ralph, that was a fun conversation. It's so nice to be able to just hang out with you and see your brain and how you think big. And I want the listener to think big. Some of the listeners are like, I only wanted $150 per episode. That's all I was looking for. It's just enough to be able to help offset some of the costs of my editing, my post-production. And they heard you talk about how you're bringing in a couple $100,000, not a year, a couple $100,000 a month through the sponsorship. And now they've got a new target. Wow, I can do better than just pull in $100. I can maybe make $150,000. And maybe even $150,000 a month.
If you love your audience and you learn how to love them better, then you'll make more money.
I got value. I'm going to let you go. And to the listener, we put out content like this frequently, so tune in to the next episode.
If you're glad that you checked out the podcast today, if you got some value out of this episode, some actionable takeaways, I invite you to do one of 3 things. A, you could do a written review on Apple. Let us know what you think. Just an honest written review. B, you could share the podcast with a friend of yours who needs it. Or C, at the very least, implement what you've learned to take your business and your podcast to the next level. And I'll see you on the next episode.